First, we'll just start discussing about Mac OS and Catalina for those that are interested in it. So the campus has been really doing a great job, mainly CTS, investigating all of the pros and cons with Catalina. Not that we would, come on in, not that we can stop it, from coming, but we can slow it down in a sense so we can make sure that when we do upgrade people, that things are working as best and no surprises. If the college actually blocked Catalina at a network level, which good for them. We did not. What we've done is take steps and strides to make sure that our student body can upgrade to Catalina right around release time. Really what CTS is looking at now are all of the incompatible pieces of software. So for those who don't know, Catalina is the first major OS that says anything that's not 32-bit won't run. There's no workaround, there's no magic we can pull out of a hat to make this work. And it's also the direction that Windows will be going in future years. So for those that have legacy software, for those that have that piece of software that has been hanging around since
last century,
the Corel Draw days, a lot of onus goes on to the vendor and the relationship you have with that vendor to see how it can go. And I think of places like research where some of the software 10 years ago might have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the OS is really preventing them from upgrading it. So those are all things to take into consideration and make sure. We should be announcing CTS, that is, very soon, the go ahead with Catalina. Pretty much everything we have right now from a software standpoint as a service is compatible. So our VPN is compatible, Silence is compatible, some of our remote tools are compatible. The things that aren't compatible that we're concerned about are biz hubs. And not all our biz hubs, not all of our Conicas, but printers always have a tough time keeping up with Apple or vice versa. So some of our, not to be too nerdy, but like our C54 color Konica biz hubs aren't supported by Catalina. And that's kind of a head scratcher of what can we do? And the jury's still out on that. But there's a handful. So if we were just to,
because we have a C.
Yeah, so CTS is we have a sheet kind of going of everything. But if we were just to type in,
450.
well, there's actually a list. So most of the vendors have this wonderful list of what's compatible and not. Compatible. I cannot type compatibility. Mac OS. Somewhere in here, I don't think they've actually updated the name of it. But you can see, so this is for High Sierra, what's compatible and not compatible. So you can go to this site, and so if we look at discontinued products, we have quite a few of these from Eastern. So, if it says yes, that can for drive, and this is for Mojave.
yeah,
not
there's
for
still
Catalina.
one back, yeah.
So a lot of them are catching up. So here we go, Catalina. And it might even be updated today. So we'll click on this, and I think it redirects to, it does, nice. So you can see January 2020. So some of these have come out. Looks like we're good here across the board. Discontinued, we have some of these. This is one we do have on campus.
We got one over in Mahar.
Sure. So, this is just kind of to understand that it's not, I don't want to say most CTS folk are Mac people, but I am as well. It's what do you do when we have a multifunction device that the whole department uses?
You send it to the secretary or someone who has a Windows machine.
And that is most certainly someone that is a discussion and an agreement with somebody. But if we were just to announce, hey, Catalina is golden, and not know this is taken out, because we contract through Eastern. Just as a side note, a little thing is, this is a discontinued product, so I would think that we'd be working, when I say we, the campus, with Eastern to get a non-discontinued product as a replacement, which would support. But you can see, we do have quite a few of these out there that the drivers aren't there. And there's sure workarounds. The problem is many Mac users are power users. They're doing things in Photoshop or high-end PDS, which require these special drivers to make it print accurately or hit that color. So, again, to explain, some people may have had a many faculty upgraded the first day and said, oh, there's no problems with it. And that's true for most people, but sometimes just because you're not having an issue,
Right.
and we have no vendor support because they have this one from us. So the big thing to take away from everything I'm saying is 64-bit is a real important thing in printer drivers, printer scanners. And when departments go to look for these things, it's really important to make sure it says 1015. So we know we're getting that. We see a lot of things get purchased that they just think it will work, and it doesn't. And unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that. So any questions about kind of that, where we're at? Like I said, in a week or so, we should be announcing we're good to move forward with Catalina. And what you would do is you would contact the help desk, and we would assess the age of the computer because there are hardware requirements. It really stems around the video card of the computer, but I'm just going to say pretty much most everything 2013 and above should support Catalina just fine, and we would upgrade that. The nice thing too is when we do upgrade, I would show on a Mac, but I don't know if it's on here. There is a way to see what applications aren't compatible. I don't know if it's on this page, but you would typically just go to the Apple in the left-hand corner. So this Apple right here, and System Report, and it will say old software or 32-bit non-compatible software. And you can see everything that's not compatible. One thing that's interesting, and I think most of us know, is iTunes is kind of dead. They've moved that around, and now it's Apple TV, or just
Apple Video.
Apple Video,
TV,
sort of, yeah.
Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. So they've kind of broken things out. That's a little logo down here. So things have definitely changed and moved around a little bit. So if we go to there, wonderful. So off of the Apple and how to upgrade page, it can actually walk you through what I was kind of explaining, what's compatible, what's not, and all of those fun things. And like I said, more times than not, things will work just fine. 2012 is what it's saying. The other thing that we're noticing isn't so much compatibility, but Apple is really big in security, and they want all of their software notarized, which really means Apple, or the software needs to be vetted through Apple, and Apple says, yes, we allow it, and they notarize it in some shape or form. If software isn't notarized, when it goes to be installed, it will prompt the end user to agree to allow this unauthorized piece of software. So that's another kind of step that would need to be taken based on the software. But in terms of everything changing, and John, feel free to jump right in, a lot of it is, I would say, consumer-based things. One of the nice things is Sidecar. So if you do have a compatible iPad and a compatible Mac hardware, you can use an iPad as a true secondary screen, which is
wirelessly.
Wirelessly, yes, all through Bluetooth. So that is a really nice thing. However, you need to have a compatible iPad and a compatible software to do it. A lot of people have older iPad 3s and 4s, and those won't be compatible. But all in all, things are pretty grand. Any questions about Catalina in this group?
One little thing that you may not be aware of because we just discovered it yesterday, iClicker will not work on it with the release that we have. And I was trying to get that resolved with the iClicker support, but that was blocked. The ability to do that was blocked by our wonderful malware system. But we're working on that. So it will not run. The software we have on our website will not run on Catalina. And if you upgrade to Catalina, it will not authenticate with Blackboard. So we're trying to get that resolved. I'm working with iClicker, but a barrier was imposed by our crappy anti-malware software.
So there is definitely, and I know that this isn't going to change. I mean, we're really looking at everything being notarized. and really kind of taking the Google approach where everything's going to be in a store, and whether it's the Google store, the App Store, the Windows Store, and purchase things through that, and things run through that. And like I said, pretty much everything is just like Mojave was, just like High Sierra was. No real big changes that we've found whatsoever. So that's new with Catalina. So moving on from that, we're going to kind of delve into Windows 10 and our lab software. So with Windows 10, name change, Windows 10, and then they have feature updates and cumulative updates. Feature updates are these big updates that allegedly come out twice a year. And there's no real name like Apple does. It's 1903. This computer that John's using right now is 1803. And we typically try to upgrade during those after a testing period. Microsoft does a good job of adding new features in 1903. The biggest feature is they've broken out Cortana to be its own separate application. So for those that don't know, Cortana is the search bar. So this is 1803. So we can search for things. It's kind of like the Alexa or the Siri of everything. So that's broken out. The other thing that slowly Windows is doing is going to this notarized approach of applications where they really want to redirect everyone to the Windows Store. But for the most part, when we start talking about, as we are right now, Windows 7 is end of life as of this week. They may be getting prompted and people are concerned that things won't work. I always welcome people to let me know what won't work, because I only know one piece of software that doesn't work. And I'm old and I've been around this campus for a very long time. And one piece of software on this campus that won't work on Windows 10. And that's because it was written for Windows 3.11. So the majority of software we have does work with Windows 10. And if those that are listening or later on, we really do need to upgrade machines from 7 to 10 for security, as well as performance. Any questions about Windows 10 before I go through kind of our software list of where CTS is with all of that? All right. So what we've done is I've kind of updated what the software is in our lab. This kind of goes in tandem with what applications we publish through Citrix virtually. So the majority, I'd probably say about 95% of all software in our labs is virtualized through Citrix. Whether people know it or not, it is. So it kind of is neat that all the software I'm talking about can be accessed through a web browser, off campus, on campus, in China, Russia, wherever you are, as long as you have a valid Lake Internet ID and an internet connection that is moderately strong. Same thing, it's really device agnostic. You can have it on a very cheap Chromebook or whatever. So in our labs right now, this is the majority of software that we have installed and updated. And I would just urge if faculty, students, whomever want software added to the lab, to use the self-service portal in ServiceNow and request it. And typically me, I'll go through and make sure the licensing allows it. Sometimes, even though it's open source, or sometimes it is free in people's minds, it's not free for research, or it's not free for education. And that's where I think a lot of really, yeah.
There's a few things. Yeah.
I mean, a quick good example is we pay a fair amount of money for a site license for a piece of software that the scientist uses. Site license means I can install it anywhere. However, they refuse. It's against their laws and policies for me to put it into Citrix. I can't virtualize it, even though I can install it every person on campus. So for whatever reasons, so we always evaluate the licensing structure of it and then try and put it out there. But also what we do, and I thought it'd be a good place to explain this, is we want to make sure that we're supplying software and software is being used, and more importantly, we're getting what we pay for out of the software. You know, with times getting tighter, belts getting tighter, and us really trying to save money and look at things. We're looking at software to make sure that it's being used accordingly to the amount of software licenses we're allocating for it. So, you know, again, make requests, but also keep in mind if it's not going to get used too much, we might take it away for a while. We can always put it back, but we really want to put software out there that, you know, definitely aids and assists in education, but also gets used.
Citrix lets you track that too to make it easier to see that.
Correct. So with Citrix, we can track it. But we also have another program called Lab Stats installed locally on all the computers, which really checks to see how many times the computer's logged in. So we can also evaluate computer lives. And do we really need, 80 computers in one spare area, not in here, and really balance that out. But yeah, that's a very good point. So good question is, basically we keep up to date with everything. IBM SPSS 26 is out. So we've upgraded that. That's spectacular. RStudio, Minitab. I'm not going to really name all of these. One of the big things, and Casey Raymond's already given a couple talks on Cell with, I believe Rebecca Mustera was there. Maybe not. Was for MathType. MathType is kind of the answer to math equation editor that was taken away with Windows 10. This has been put into Citrix as well as enabled in our Google portal. So, Sean, you are logged in, correct?
Yes.
I don't want to show your business, but.
Oh, that's okay.
All right. So the cool thing is, if I were to go to Google Docs, sure. MathType has been allowed and enabled, just like Sotera, in the add-ons, just like Crackle. So now we purchased this kind of as a campus-wide, so now we can use this accessible, inclusive math editing software that people like, I guess. I'm not a
I've been using it for like 12 years.
It's also in Citrix, so the standalone is there. So what this means is anybody who signs into Google Chrome browser anywhere, like John's done here, he has access to it. But for those that want to use it on an iPad or don't want to sign in, that information is also, that software is also accessible in Citrix. So that was kind of one of the new, go ahead, I need to get up on the browser.
And there's plugins for Word and for
Absolutely.
and other things.
Absolutely. So really no huge changes. We've upgraded Access and Excel to be compliant with all of the accessibility and new features that Microsoft keeps pushing our way. Microsoft is definitely pushing towards Microsoft Office 365. So in the next few years, that's really going to kind of be the norm, I think. Some campuses in SUNY have already adopted this. And some of the things to consider, and the reason why I bring it up is when we start talking about book vendors and software vendors, make sure you ask the questions of, is this compatible with Office 365? Excel add-ins, PowerPoint plugins.
Pretty good that way. I've been using it for a long time.
And some aren't. And eventually when we do migrate to that in that direction, we want to make sure all that works properly.
And it has better accessibility features and lots of other new features.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, this is kind of what's in our software list, but also accessible with Citrix. So it's a great thing. I don't think there's any questions about that, is there?
And for people online, just say something.
Yeah, just chime right in. So, moving down that direction, the big topic, and I know that Nicole will be giving a session on Adobe, but I wanted to kind of touch upon Adobe and what we've done with Adobe and try and come out and make Adobe a bad word. Adobe changed its licensing structure to go from kind of this umbrella campus shared device license to a named user license. So what that really means is every individual has to be entitled a license to use any Adobe product, including Adobe Acrobat Pro. So we've gone pretty much all winter long identifying all of the people who already have Adobe, tried to reach out to them, upgrade them. If anyone is online or here and hasn't had that happen and need it, contact the help desk. The process is generally simple. The snags that we've seen are for the Mac users, you need to have 1013 or higher to use any of the Adobe apps. So it's more reason to keep upgraded, right? Yes. So most apps in the new Adobe Creative Cloud do work, but there are a few apps that do require 1013 or higher to work. They'll just be grayed out. So we want to make sure, and if you do need those, if you're not using those apps, you probably won't even know. But if you do need those apps, you will know. So you would just contact the help desk, and the process is pretty straightforward. We would just entitle your username, and we'd install a piece of software called the Creative Cloud desktop app. And once that's installed, you would just sign in with your LakerNet ID and password, your email address and password, and you would have all of the Adobe apps. There's 19 that we have. We're not really picking and choosing. You get all of them. Now, I say that loosely in that we have a finite number of licenses for all the Adobe products. When people call and say, I need Adobe, we're going to ask the question, well, what are you using it for? And if it's to open PDFs, that's not a real reason to use Adobe or to tie up a license, because there's Adobe Acrobat Reader free, as well as both the macOS and Windows open up PDFs just fine. So really, when you need Adobe Acrobat, you're doing forms or doing object character recognition to transcribe things, we'll know when you bring it up. And we'll put you either in that bucket for just Adobe Acrobat, or put you in the yellow bucket, which has all 19 apps. And from there, you can self-service and pick and choose. So once CTS installs this piece of software, it's kind of like a storefront or a portal, an iTunes or an App Store. You can see each one and download them, whether you're an admin or not, and it will stay updated, and that's that. It works pretty good. Some of the questions we've had about this is, do we have Adobe stock, the stock pictures licensing? And that's SUNY-wide. So, I don't know if I mentioned it, but this was a SUNY licensing contract with Adobe. It wasn't just SUNY Oswego making these decisions. And as such, SUNY or Adobe stock was not enabled or included. I'm still kind of fuzzy on that. But iTech and SUNY are working on enabling that for those that need these stock photos. Captivate is not included in our licensing at this time. What we're doing for our labs is we do have shared device licensing for Adobe, which allows us to install basically the applications that can be used by multiple users within a certain confined context. So we can do that in the labs, which we've been doing. Any questions about the Adobe stuff at all? No? Good? Very cool. And then I was going to leave the last 7 minutes up for any questions that anyone may have regarding anything related to the software, whether it's faculty, staff, or our labs, or virtual.
I have a question.
Sure.
It's a little bit of a home computer question, but I'm getting a new computer at home, and I've always used the license where you can get Microsoft Office on your home computer.
Yeah.
And so then they're going to this 365 thing, and you get the subscription as long as you're working. But if you were near retiring, would you maybe want to try to get like Office 2019 on a computer just to have it, and it would get a little out of date, but you'd have it for a long time. But can you even get Office 2019? Is there do I have the right year on that? Because
Well, I understand where you're going with this. And
yeah.
I kind of look at that, but I mean, in short, when you log into Office.com with your SUNY credentials, you can download that copy to, I think, up to 5 computers, and that will last. But really, you're really kind of governed by Microsoft and what their licensing says, and it's a yearly license with that. So if you're a soon-to-be alumni, unfortunately, after that year's expired, you would need to purchase that.
But it's $99 a year for people with an
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on pricing. It always changes. Yeah,
Well,
it's a discount. Yeah, it's currently probably a discounted price. So, most certainly, you can download that, and that should work for a year. But you have to remember, kind of what I was saying earlier, that Microsoft and Adobe, they're really going to the software as a service, the SaaS, and they really love the subscription model, so they can know exactly where their licenses are going. So just by downloading that 2019, it probably will expire in a year. You can also install Adobe on your home machine using the same methodology that we were saying, because Adobe does allow you to be signed into 2 devices at the same time. And I believe the next person who's going to be talking will be talking in great depth about Adobe. So you can stay for this session as well if you like. Does that kind of answer your question about that?
Yep. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Oh, these are great. Great and quiet. Okay. I think I'm just going to leave this be, like John said. Right? I'm just gonna leave this alone for you. All right.